Well, hello, and welcome to the AzureWell podcast, where we're here to help you restore balance to your body and your health. And so joining me today is Dr. Alfonso Monzo. Dr.
Hello.
Monzo, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Monzo joins me at least once a month to talk about everything related to health, and he brings his expertness from being a naturopath doctor. But today is kind of special. We are going to be joined by Dr. Shamsuddin, and he is the author of the book on IP6. So, Dr. Shamsuddin, welcome to the podcast.
Oh,
Welcome.
thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Monzo.
Yeah. So, Dr. Shamsuddin has a book that we carry here at Azure Standard. And at AzureWell, we have used this book a lot in being convinced and knowing that the IP6 Supreme product that we have is what you talk about in your book. And we're very happy that you have, oh, there we go.
IP6.
Dr. Monzo has the IP6 Supreme with inositol bottle from AzureWell. And yes, both Dr. Monzo and Dr. Shamsuddin have really influenced us on being able to pick this up. I first heard about it from Dr. Monzo because he was talking about how it helps with iron balance in the body and making sure that iron is in the right place in the body, and that IP6 will help move that iron from the tissues to the blood where it belongs. I had a really good experience when I started taking IP6. And to have this book by Dr. Shamsuddin describing all the benefits has been just wonderful. So welcome, Dr. Shamsuddin.
Thank you again. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm glad
So,
to hear that you had some first-hand experience on it, and that makes it very gratifying. It's worth all the effort. When I started research on IP6, people were basically telling me you're not only crazy, but you're also stupid. But it was a long process, pretty much uphill battle. Even now, in the journals, in the literature, I do engage in defending IP6. So it is all of what you just said is really worth it, and I'm glad that there are many other people who share your views, and that's very gratifying. Thank you, Susan.
yes, my experience with it has been that when I very first started taking it, I ended up with way more energy. So that was the very first thing that I noticed was more energy. And after that, I would say the next thing I noticed is that my need for thyroid meds went down. And the more I can do things naturally and not need external help like that was very good. So I feel like IP6 has done me very well. And so thank you for bringing this to us and doing the research on it.
Pleasure.
I know Dr. Monzo.
Mhm.
Dr. Monzo, you've been inspired by this product for a long time. And we've got Dr. Shamsuddin here. We can ask him some questions.
Actually, exactly.
What
At
is
least
it?
maybe 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
I think I've been using it at least maybe 4 now. But yeah, we were going to ask what is it, but I think before we ask that, maybe we asked Dr. Shamsuddin, when did you first find out about IP6 and start studying it?
Mhm.
Oh, it's a good question. Actually, my research has basically focused on cancer, early detection and prevention. As a pathologist and as a physician, I've seen the ravages of cancer. By the time a cancer forms, it's already too late. When I was in first year medical school, one of my most favorite uncle actually was diagnosed with small cell lung cancer. Excuse me, and in about 2 weeks he passed. My dad himself had the same lung cancer, and he too passed, and I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to him. So, so excuse me. My whole view is that cancer is a devastating disease, and it's a dangerous disease, and it needs to be detected very early on, and prevention is probably our best strategy, because with the therapy, it's a losing game. It's a losing battle. So my focus in research in life has been early detection and prevention, and I was using colon cancer as a model to study. And as I was doing my literature research, due diligence, I came across the process whereby everybody says that high fiber diet is good for you. It prevents colon cancer. Well, as I was reading more and more in depth, I found that it's somewhat controversial. Actually, it was controversial. There are several large scale epidemiological studies that showed that fiber had no relationship. Some showed there is a positive correlation. Some even showed a negative correlation. So it was confusing. But again, thanks to the media and the media spin, people who are promoting high fiber diet, and that's the gospel, that high fiber diet is good for prevention of colon cancer. The experimental data also were mostly showing or reporting that high fiber diet prevents colon cancer in rats and mice. But then came a paper from Dr. Lucian Jacobs. I believe he was in UCSF at the time. And I knew Lucian personally. And so he had a paper that showed in a mouse model of colon cancer that high fiber diet actually increased the incidence of colon cancer. Then, given my admiration and regard for Lucian Jacobs, I could not totally discount it. And so I said, I got to read more about it. Then in 1985, a paper, just a hypothesis paper that came out in the journal Cancer, where a serial chemist by the name of Ernst Graf, he published his opinion. And it's interesting. I was kind of surprised that that paper could actually be published in a journal like Cancer, but I'm glad it was published, because it was essentially a hypothesis. What he said is that the correlation between high fiber diet and the prevention of colon cancer is because of something what he called phytic acid, or phytate. And then I did some more research on it, and I found out that there was one epidemiological study that was pretty much ignored by the mainstream scientists, is the difference in incidence of colon and breast cancer between Finland and Denmark. The Finns eat just about half the amount of fiber, total fiber, than the Danes do. The Danes eat a lot of fiber. Ironically, the incidence of colon and breast cancer is double in the Danes than it is in the Finns. So Ernst Graf basically hypothesized that the Finns eat a lot of porridge, which has a lot of IP6, or phytic acid. Now, Dr. Graf, it was Ernst Graf and one of his co-authors, he thought that it was purely because it's an antioxidant. It chelates iron, so therefore it prevents oxidative damage, and that's how it prevents colon cancer. Interestingly, around the same time, the concept of inositol triphosphate was coming to the literature. IP3, inositol triphosphate, or IP3, was at that time discovered as a signal molecule within the cells of the yeast. And so I started looking at phytic acid. What is phytic acid? It is inositol hexaphosphate, or inositol 6-phosphate. Then I started to think that, well, we have inositol in our body. Inositol triphosphate is a signal molecule. And we eat a lot of IP6, which is inositol hexaphosphate, or phytic acid, or phytate. And we eat it in the cereals. So how does inositol get into the body? And if it is in the slime molds, in the baker's yeast, and so on and so forth, why couldn't it be in the mammalian cells? Now, that's a very outlandish idea. It's almost a blasphemy, because the people in nutritional science have been looking at IP6, phytic acid, as an anti-nutrient, and still do. There are papers coming out in the literature as an anti-nutrient because it presumably chelates, removes iron and calcium and magnesium and so on and so forth. But I just used some naive common sense approach, and I said, why couldn't we give IP6, and we could eat IP6, and some or other IP6 could go into the body and would affect the signal transduction molecule, since IP3 is the molecule that regulates whether a cell should divide or a cell shouldn't divide. And it also, at that time, that was the only thing we knew about IP3, that it regulates the intracellular calcium, which actually triggers cell division. So my idea, from my very childhood, I've been bullied by by a lot of people, and instead of exposing myself to further bullying by my peers, I just decided to do some experiment and see for myself without talking about it. Fortunately, I had some grant money, and within the next 2-3 days, I went to the lab, ordered the rats, and designed some experiment where I fed the rats with IP6 and so on and so forth. And we got the results to see whether IP6 actually does affect the cancer incidence. I had ongoing experiments in my lab on producing cancer in the colon by chemicals. Azoxymethane is one of the chemicals that we used, and I simply started feeding my rats with IP6, and then also with inositol, because I had other theories, and we can talk about that. But before I fed my rats, I tested it myself, wanted to see that whether my rats would eat it, would
So
drink it.
you did some testing of yourself first.
Yes,
You
I
tried it
drank
on
some.
yourself.
Yes,
What were you expecting would happen?
nothing. I just wanted to see what would happen. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I just wanted to see how it would test and whether something bad will happen. I don't know. I don't know what to expect, but I just did it. Before I gave it to my rats, the first thing I did, I got IP6 from Sigma. I put some in the drinking water, in a cup of water, and I drank it. Oh, doesn't taste too bad. Okay. The rats, if I can drink it, the rats will too.
And actually, it doesn't taste bad at all. It has just a slightly bit of a chalky kind of taste, and it does
Right.
kind of sink to the bottom. But you have told me that when you take this, and I usually just take the powder. I don't take it in the pills just because I don't like to take pills if I don't have to. And you told me that it's important that the IP6 be taken away from protein. I think you said it didn't need to be away from food, but particularly away from protein. So sometimes I'll just drink it straight. Other times I'll like put a few tablespoons of grape juice or something like that in there to make it taste better. But it works fine. But if you take it with protein, I understand that makes it so that it doesn't work as well.
It's without evidence. It's for abundance of caution. IP6 has got, as you can imagine, there are 6 binding sites, 6 they bind with calcium, and in the water, when you dissolve it, they may dissociate, and they may bind with the protein in some manner, and that may reduce its absorption, but that's only a hypothesis without any proof. Professor Felix Grasses, friend of mine in University of Balearic Island in Spain, has done some studies, and he showed that it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference in terms of absorption.
Well, it tastes good. It tastes good just like it is, or put a little bit of fruit juice or something in there. So it's not bad at all. I've tasted some really bad things, and this is not one of them. So
it's one of those things that I prefer, and again, without evidence, it's just a hunch. If you take it in without, the protein may you don't know what the nature of the protein is, what state of the protein is, and whether they would bind it or not. If it is, and it's, if anything, it's very, very minor, I would say. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, I think for the listeners, we should get into what is IP6 and inositol.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let me show you a slide, and if I may. IP6 is inositol hexaphosphate. Myoinositol is a hexacarbon sugar. Is almost like a glucose, but it is not glucose. So inositol is related to glucose, and it has got six, just like glucose has six binding sites. IP6 has inositol with six phosphates, as you can see here. It is in the rice, and you see the background here. It's in rice, in corn, in cereal, in all the cereal grains, in sesame, wheat, anything. And almost every single cereal grain has IP6, more or less. The highest amount is, I believe, is in corns, up to 6% weight by weight. Also, black seed had recently reported to have about 6.8% or close to 7% of the IP6. So a rice bran has, which is usually the biggest commercial source of IP6, is the rice bran. And rice has about 2% weight by weight. Corn, as I said, has 6%. In the past, it used to be extracted from corn, but now it's in polishing the rice. You eliminate, you leave the bran out, and in the past that was discarded. But nowadays, what the rice companies are doing is extracting the IP6, inositol, and few other chemicals from rice bran. So
Yes,
that is
that's where we get our IP6 from. When we have it manufactured for the AzureWell brand, we get ours from non-GMO rice bran. And so that's where it comes from, is rice bran. And that feels good knowing that it's not just coming from some laboratory somewhere. This is coming from food, mostly the discarded food. When they made white rice, they took off all the bran on the outside, and that probably has been causing some health issues for people. So this is a way of bringing that back in, because I think you've also told me that it's not really possible to get enough IP6 from the food that you eat once your body is out of balance.
Yeah. First of all, over the last 50 or 60 years, there have been a trend to polish all the grains, the rice, the wheat, and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, there was a large study that was published by, it was reported by University of Milan. It was published, I believe, International Journal of Cancer. And they have taken about 10,000, approximately 10,000 people with and without cancer. And they've shown that the incidence of cancers of every single organ in the body, except for thyroid, was related to eating polished pasta, the pasta, polished grain. If, on the other hand, the people who did not have the polished grains pasta, they had a lower incidence, statistically significantly lower incidence of cancer. The thyroid cancer is a different issue because cancer is mostly related to radiation injury, and that was not related to. So that was the only, and thank goodness there's an exception. Otherwise, it would be too good to be true. People saw that can be.
So I wonder if we should explain the difference between the phatic acid and phatate, because I think a lot of times this is kind of used in the medical field, as you said, as an anti-nutrient, and to scare people into thinking that these two things are actually the same thing and that you shouldn't be taking it.
Right. Absolutely. And this is a misconception that had been propagated over the years. By the way, phytic acid, or IP6, was actually discovered by Hertig back in 1850s, in the early, 53, 56, something like that, around that time. Anyway, So from then, it had gone through a roller coaster ride on terms of its publicity. Some said it is good, some said it's bad. So back to the slide here, if I may show the slide. This is phytic acid, which is inositol hexaphosphate. And that is something that is in the lab. In the lab, in the test tube, as you can see, the phosphate has free binding sites. The phosphate would be free to bind various cations. Okay, so phosphate is negatively charged, and phytic acid does not exist in nature. It exists only in the lab, only in the chemical industry, in the chemistry lab. The phosphate binds naturally with calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, sodium, potassium, all the positively charged ion, because phosphate is a negatively charged ion. It is within 3 to 5 charges, and so it would therefore bind with all of those. Now, in nature, it exists already. What you find in the food is usually calcium, magnesium, IP6. So 6 of those, some of them, 3 of them or 4 of them would have calcium, or 2 of them others would have magnesium. But in the lab, you can make it with sodium, or we can potassium and so on. So once it is bound already with calcium and magnesium, it's not going to be binding anything more. But then there's a conundrum, and that comes to what Susan alluded to her own experience with the iron. How does it remove the iron? And this is something we don't understand. And that goes into the basic concept of why IP6 is there to begin with in all our food grains and our staple food. We don't know. But as you can see, if you take IP6, which Susan does take, and I take, and I'm sure a lot of people do, it's got calcium and magnesium. Once it goes into the body, it probably dissociates. Calcium and magnesium probably dissociates, and it's available for something else. Now, if there is excess iron, then that excess iron would be available to bind with the free phosphate. And here's the interesting aspect. If the iron level is normal, it does nothing. Experiments, I'll show you the next slide here. For example, we treated the animals with IP6, looked at the calcium level, iron level, magnesium level, zinc level, nothing happens. Some reviewers who are very tough, they say, oh, the serum mineral is not going to tell you much. You must look at the bone. So we look at the bone. Again, there's no difference between the treated group versus the control group. There's absolutely no significant difference in terms. So it does not reduce. If the level of various minerals in the body is normal, nothing happens. On the other hand, if the levels are lower or higher, then it would reduce it. And why that happens, that I have no idea. It's God, nature, whoever you call it, had designed it or is there, and we still have a lot to learn about it. All I can say that is we need to know more about it. Mm. And there are a few other things that it does too, which are somewhat paradoxical. We can address that.
Well, one thing that I was going to point out that actually it was a benefit that I saw from taking IP6 that I didn't mention at the beginning is having to do with ferritin. So when I had cancer, my ferritin levels were very high. When I got over cancer and was supposedly better, and I noticed that my ferritin levels, which are, in a blood test, those ferritin levels remained high. And even though I was feeling good and everything was great, my ferritin level, which is a kind of an iron storage mechanism in the blood, that it kind of indicates inflammation. It shows that there's iron in the tissues, not in the blood. And my ferritin levels, they were like 400 and something, when normal is below 150. It wouldn't come down, everything I tried. until I started taking IP6. And then it took about, I'd say maybe 6 months or so, but the ferritin levels gradually started coming down. And so now they are definitely in the normal range. But to me, that was huge because something in that IP6 is able to move that iron out and make it so that the ferritin indicating iron metabolism is messed up. It fixes that. At least it did for me. I can only speak for myself, but I had very good results with that.
No, I'm glad to hear that. I actually have a slide number 43 where it actually shows that patients. I have to really go into that very quickly before you get dizzy. Here is a patient's ferritin level that has dramatically gone down. So, yeah.
That would be very much indicated of like mine was, but that's interesting that their ferritin level there started out, not quite 200, whereas mine was over 400, and it came down to below 150 after a few months. Amazing.
Yep.
Amazing. It makes me wonder about, there's another substance out there a lot of people know about, zeolites. They're not all created equal because it depends on how you process it. But one of the better companies out there that makes a really good zeolite, the idea of it is when you have it in its right constituents, it has minerals already bound in it. And it has these little honeycomb shaped traps that trap and chelate metals in the body. And so you have to make sure you get the right type because they can be, if they're not cleaned right and stuff, they can be toxic and stuff. So you have to have the right people making it. But they have a whole theory on how they think it works when it's processed right. And that is when it goes into the body, they call it a swap and trap, where it swaps the minerals out and donates the minerals to the body and then traps the heavy metals and pulls the heavy metals out. And that's their theory on how that works. And when I was looking at IP6, I was like, I think IP6 might be doing the exact same thing.
Exactly. You're right. That's exactly the same thing. Yeah.
And it's just amazing. When the minerals are there, it's like it just knows exactly what to do and how to take out the stuff you don't want, but it leaves the stuff that is supposed to be there because it's already there. It's amazing.
I had, I believe, 2 patients from England who had contacted me over 10, 12 years ago who had Wilson's disease. And they had taken IP6. I believe one person reported, another person from Singapore. And one of them reported that they have, they've done well, it was better. But most people don't actually tell me what happens. I get to know them from third parties or indirectly or something like that. Very, very, very few people like Susan would tell me that, yes, it has helped. Remarkably, I had a lady from Connecticut who had, in this day and age, she found my home address and sent me a handwritten letter telling that how it helped her in her myelodysplastic syndrome. That's very, very few and far between. She may be one of the hundreds of, thousands of people who have reported back to me.
Well, hopefully people on the Azure Standard website, when they buy and try our IP6 Supreme, will go on there and put their testimonial as to how it helped them. Because yes, we've had such good success, and we do have a place on our website, Trustpilot, where people can go and put how the product affected them or how they liked it. So hopefully you'll get some more feedback for how good IP6 is doing for people.
Well, it's more than that. I think it's for the. I think people who get the benefit have the responsibility, as a moral responsibility and obligation, to let other people know that it helped them, so that other people can be helped. There's nothing wrong with it. At the same time, if it has not helped them, they should know. They should let others know. Or if it has caused damage, that should also be reported. That way, they can do their part for the society, their social responsibility. I think we are responsible as socially responsible animals. We owe that to our society.
So what would you say the main good positive reason for taking IP6 would be? What is it supposed to do in the body? What can a person expect that it does?
Well, first of all, as you said, the first thing you noticed is you had got a lot of energy after you took it. That's a very common complaint. Everybody says that. That yes, we get more energetic. The main reason is I think IP6 and that with inositol are essential elements. They probably be someday be categorized as vitamins. Inositol is already considered to be in the B vitamin category, but IP6 should probably be as a vitamin because it is, if it is deficient, you do get a lot of problems. People in the Bantus in South Africa who eat, it's about half a kilo of maize diet, about a pound of maize diet every day. They don't get diabetes, they don't get kidney stone, they don't get cancer, they don't get heart attack. So I think it is to keep your immune system high, have a good immune system, to have a good cellular defense in terms of moderation of your cell division. Cancer is a disease where you have uncontrolled cell division. So this normalizes, IP6 normalizes cell division. So therefore it prevents the cancer. As a matter of fact, there are reports that it even has treated and successfully cured some of the cancers, the late stage cancers as well. So there is, for general health, ever since IP6 became available in the market in 1998, I have been taking it and I religiously take it. My family takes it. We all take it to maintain good health. And I've noticed that I don't get flu. Since 1998, I have not had an episode of flu at all. Common cold, I don't get it. If the very early sign of some nasal discomfort, I just take extra doses of IP6, 4 or 6 capsules just for a day or two, extra doses, and I don't get to see the cold anymore. So it's ever since 1998, I've been perfectly healthy, except for some ski accidents, which was a stupid thing I did.
Funny. Well, I was looking at your book here, and to kind of let the cat out of the bag, your table of contents talks about cancer. It talks about the fact that it's an antioxidant. You have a chapter on immunity and inflammation, radiation protection, diabetes mellitus, atherosclerosis for heart issues, bone, stone, and tooth. And I think that's where you were mentioning a minute ago about kidney stones and things like that, as well as neuropsychiatric diseases, which I think that category includes things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and whatnot. So those are some of the subjects you cover in your book, and you've done the studies on them to show that this does indeed help. And that's kind of the word you're trying to get out to let people know about.
Yeah, my basic research has been on cancer and on immunity. And on the other hand, the rest of the things that are in the book are other people's work, which I had compiled it in the book. When IP6 first was launched in 1998, I had organized an international symposium in Kyoto, Japan, where I invited all the people who are working on IP6 in various fields, from a biochemical point of view, from atherosclerosis, heart condition point of view, kidney stone point of view, from all of those various areas. And then over the years, I've seen, I keep a track of all the papers, literature that comes out, scientific paper that come out, and I cover them. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, I was notified by a clearinghouse called ResearchGate. I believe they're out of Germany. They told me that one of my paper was cited by somebody. So I go into the paper, and lo and behold, they show experimental evidence that how IP6 could actually prevent Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease because of the experiment. I just posted it on the Facebook on IP6 research page. So there is a continuous publication research going on IP6 area, not as much as I would love to see, but very, some of it is going. That's because it's not really very fashionable. There is not much grant money in this research, and it's not, quote unquote, very attractive to research. People are more focused on genetic routes, gene modulation. Everybody thinks that you can fix the genes, and like a carpenter, you can slice and repair the genes, and everything will be fine. But that doesn't seem to happen.
I was wondering if we can explain the importance of IP6 with inositol, because I noticed there are a lot of companies out there that will sell just inositol by itself, and sometimes just IP6, but you kind of even have a patent with the idea of IP6 with inositol. And what is the reason for that you want both?
There are two or three reasons for them, and I'm glad you stated that. It's a very important question. It not only touches on the scientific aspect of it, it also goes into the ethics and morality of people. Since my patent was on IP6 and inositol, and I will tell you why I go into IP6 and inositol, but then there are companies that started to, in order to bypass the patent, they started selling IP6 alone or inositol alone. That was the reason. They did not read the papers. They didn't see the paper. They just wanted to bypass the patent, make money. We have done, the reason I combined IP6 and inositol was that the theory was IP3 is the molecule that is within the cell and that causes regulates the cell division. So my theory was that if we take IP6 and IP6 gets dephosphorylated, and then I add inositol to it, then there will be double, theoretically, there'll be more number of IP3 or lower inositol phosphate. So whatever the effect IP3 does, it'll be double, it'll be more. And lo and behold, we do see that evidence experimentally, clinically. We have seen that we have done the experience with the rats, in mice and rats, where we gave only IP6, we gave only inositol. The incidence of tumor was less. With inositol was not as effective. So I don't know why people are selling inositol alone. But when you combine the two, you can see that not only the incidence of tumor is less, the immunity also is much higher, much better. We measured it by natural killer cell activity, and you can see that if you give IP6 and inositol, the natural killer cell activity goes much higher. So the combination of that is certainly better. In at least one experiment that we published, and if you look carefully in the data, you'd see that if in a mammary tumor model in rats, if you give inositol alone, the tumors, yes, are less. There is less number of tumors, but the tumors were larger, okay, compared to the control. Now, think of it, but that doesn't happen with combination of IP6 and inositol. Now, think of it, if you have a brain tumor where there's very little space, even a 2%, 3% increase in your tumor size is going to be fatal. Why would anybody sell or take IP6 alone knowing that that may be the cause? That may happen. I mean, it may not happen, but it could happen because there's at least one experimental evidence that is there showing that the tumors are larger. Okay, so I think it's unconscionable. It's certainly very, very unethical for people to simply sell IP6. Okay, just IP6 to do that. You don't need to do that. And for what? Only to bypass the patent? That's
Well,
uncomfortable.
and something that has been very important for us here at AzureWell, something that we focus on, and it's our mission to help the body to heal itself, because ultimately that is the way to true healing. And so my view of it is that when we take something like this IP6 that came from brown rice bran, the piece that was missing in our diets because we were eating white rice and white flour and things like that, that actually helps the body to have what it needs, have the building blocks, have the tools that it needs to actually heal itself. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with our entire line, is make it so that the body can heal itself. So my next question for you would be, how much would a person need to take of our IP6 Supreme that has both the IP6 and the inositol in it together in the right ratio? How much would a person need to take of that? I think that we've got it as a scoop, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the data, there is no clinical trial for. Usually you do when you have drugs like put out in the market, there is a clinical trial for dose determination, usually phase 1 trial that's been done, but in this case, there was no trial that was done for dose determination. So I extrapolated data from experimental animals. I said, well, how much should we give to the rats? And what is the evidence? What is the doses they get, and how many tumors do they get, and so on and so forth. And I found that in the animals where we treated with for cancer, where there is pre-existing tumor, we use it at, I believe, 70 milligram per kilo, I believe is what was the dosage. I'll have to look that up. But in terms of prevention, I feel that, and then I increase that because you factor into the extra injury that insult that you are getting from our environment, from bad dietary habits, and so on and so forth. And I feel that let's see, 2 grams a day is probably more than enough for people to take it. There's really no very high dose for oral toxicity. I have known people who have taken as much as 20 grams a day without having any side effects, except that cancer didn't come back. That's the only side effect that they have. I know somebody in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who has become who have been a cancer survivor, breast cancer survivor, and she had been taking, I think, 20 grams a day, and she's been very healthy for the last 15 years. She had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and without any problem. So the 2 grams a day is something that I take every day, and I've been taking it for the last 25, 27 years, 28 years. For people with cancer, it should be it could be 8 grams a day. If somebody who is at a high risk, then it should be an intermediate dose, for example, 4 grams a day. So that either 8 capsules or 1 scoop of powder, whichever. The idea is not to. Some people will take 1 capsule, so it has not done anything to me. That's because it's a dose thing. IP6 is normally in our body. Professor Grasses has done extensive experiments, and he has shown that it is in our body, and I collaborated with him. I had volunteers. One of my associate, Dr. Ivana, which She was working at Professor Grass's lab for a couple of summers on sabbatical, and she gave her own blood, and they tested the blood and found out that if you're taking a healthy diet, you have a higher normal level of IP6 in your blood, and if you stop taking it a healthy diet, typical Mediterranean diet, your IP6 level goes down. So it is normal. So now think of it, steroids. We have steroids in our body, but by taking a little bit of steroid, is that going to help you? No. In order to treat your disease, you have to give a therapeutic dose of the steroid. So the same thing here, IP6 is there in our body physiologically. In order to make it, you want to see a pharmacological action, you have to give pharmacological dosage. One capsule, by taking one capsule, is not going to do anything to anybody. 500 milligrams is not going to do anything to anybody. That's the minimum. That will probably, over 10-year period, will bring your low IP6 level to normal, I would say. Because we have been deficient in it, as I said, over the last 60 or 70 years, by polishing our cereal grains or rice and wheat and all that, we are eliminating that from our diet. And you can see the correlation between that and the incidence of diseases, cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. These are becoming epidemic, and all essentially because we are not taking the food that we are supposed to eat properly. There is a saying, you are what you eat, and basically what that happened to us. We're not eating the right amount.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out to me one point that the high fiber diet, this is kind of going back to what you said at the beginning, the high fiber diet that is helping people to be healthier in their intestines and other places, it may not be because of the fiber exactly, but because of the IP6 that's within it. So when you have all the white sugar, white flour, white pasta, if that bran has been removed, then you've also removed the IP6 that will make you well as well.
Correct. But the beneficial effect of actual fiber should not be overlooked also, because that may help in bowel movement, having a regular bowel movement. So, but that doesn't mean that just because you are taking that, you shouldn't be ignoring IP6. Ideally, it should be the combination, which is what the way nature has provided to begin with.
Well, I'm glad we talked about the therapeutic dose, because that was my original I guess introduction. When I was in naturopathic school, we had, when we got to the topic of studying cancer, and of course, it's a little bit different than medical. So we're looking at what are some alternatives for cancer. And in a lot of the books, they would mention IP6. And I just know that a lot of the colleagues that I'm around, they don't really use IP6 and inositol much. So what happened is, a lot of us, when I would talk to different practitioners, we would try IP6 for different people and usually not get any results. And usually the reason is because we were using a form that was in a capsule, and people were using 1 or 2 capsules. Now, about 4 or 5 years ago, when I got into the issue of what are we doing with all this unbound iron, we're finding that people have all kinds of unbound iron, especially in cancer and a lot of the neurological conditions like you were mentioning. We're finding that there's this unbound iron that's being accumulated in the tissue, and there really is no good way to get rid of iron when it's too high in the body besides bleeding. And so we don't want to go back to bloodletting. But so then I started looking at the IP6 again, and I realized, I started reading your book, and I found out, wait a minute, you might need a therapeutic dose for this stuff to work. So then when we started looking at, okay, if you take enough, all of a sudden we're getting the iron out. All of a sudden people are getting results now with health problems, with cancer and different things. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think you mentioned in your studies with the animals, the more IP6 inositol you gave, the better and quicker that you saw the results with tumor shrinkage. And that's what I see with the iron too. The higher the dose, the faster we bring down those numbers.
And I believe in the experimental animals where we the animals with the pre-existing tumor, xenotransplanted hepatoma, we give 40 milligram per kilo. So that's about 2,800 gram. For a 70 kilo person, that's about 2.8 gram per day. But again, so there's no harm in it. Why don't take extra doses and extra protection on it? That is, it's inexpensive. It's relatively inexpensive, that is, compared to the chemotherapeutic drugs, which are in hundreds and thousands. And it's not harmful. It's safe. There's really no orally. It is extremely safe.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's all in the dosage. It's all in the dosage.
That's right. I think
it's same thing with penicillin. I mean, if you are going to be giving antibiotics or any of the antibiotics, if you give low dose, it's not going to do anything. You got to give that right amount. It's always the case.
So what would you say to an average person that just wants to be well, be healthy? They just want to boost their health, but they don't necessarily have a terrible disease yet. What would you say to them about IP6 and whether this could help them, and in what way? What would be what you'd say to someone that's just trying to be generally healthy?
I would tell them what I do. Take 4 capsules of IP6 every day. That's what I've been taking since 1998.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll be healthy, happy. There are other, as you mentioned about neuropsychiatric disease, inositol particularly has been given. There have been a lot of studies, clinical studies done with inositol, and in large doses, it does boost the mood. It helps in depression and anxiety and so on and so forth. And again, IP6 and inositol is like the chicken and egg. One becomes the other. IP6 dephosphorylates into inositol. So there is a benefit in having IP6 and inositol. And in people who have, I've seen personally, some people I know personally who have been taking IP6 inositol, and their anxiety, their depression is much better controlled. Mm-hmm. So it helps in those conditions too. It is general, and as I said at the beginning, the nature has provided this for a reason. It's out there in nature, or God has given it to us. Otherwise, this would not be in every single staple diet in the whole planet. Mm-hmm. It's in the soil. It comes from the soil. The myoinositol is the form that we eat. But in the soil, it is kiloinositol. It's a different stereoisomer. And from the soil, it goes into the seeds. From the seeds, to go to the plant. And from the plant, it comes back out into the grains. So, and then we eat it. And now, 30, 40 years later, in 1985, people scoped at me and said, oh, that's impossible. It's never been found in the human. Now IP6 is found in the human cells, in mammalian cells. Mm-hmm. So, there are inositol IP1, IP2, IP3, IP4, IP5, even there are IP7, IP8 now. There are pyrophosphates of IP6 that are now discovered in various cells in yeast and so on and so forth. But it's just a matter of time. And why do you feel energetic? This is something that has not been addressed adequately. Again, not so much of research. You'd understand that in the body, the currency for exchange of energy is the phosphate, from ADP to ATP, ATP to ADP. Mm-hmm. Now, where do you get your phosphates from? If you have enough IP6, one molecule supplies you 6 phosphates. So that's your savings account. It gives you the phosphates, and that's how you exchange the phosphates, and you get. Does it go into the ATP ADP cycle? I think there's some studies that were done in plants that shows that it can go into the ATP ADP cycle. So it's possible, but there hasn't been much work on it.
So, Dr. Monzo, unless you have another question for Dr. Shamsuddin, I have a nosy question for him.
No, I think we covered the bases here. So
yeah, this is good.
Now know why they need to take it, or why they should be taking it, and why they would want to take it.
Yeah.
And what it is.
So I have another one last nosy question for you. So what else do you take along with IP6? And, like basically what is your diet? What is your lifestyle like beyond IP6? Do you have a particular diet? Do you take other supplements with this?
Everything in moderation is what I do. Every single thing in moderation. I'm not an alcoholic, but I drink every now and then a glass of wine. I don't, not too much, not too little. I don't smoke. I've never smoked. Actually, I smoked for a day or two, and when my dad found out, he just gave me that look, and that was the end of my smoking career. Just light exercises, even when I was a child or a young person, I never felt like I wanted to be a bodybuilder, but I did moderate exercise like push-ups and walking and hiking and so on and so forth. But again, everything in moderation. Everything in moderation.
Do you take other supplements besides IP6?
No, not really. No. IP6 is the only thing. Well, I started to take some vitamin D, but that's only lately. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
This is good. I feel like we learned something, and hopefully people can get your book and read it and learn more about it, and then try some IP6 Supreme from AzureWell, because I know that it's definitely helped me a lot. So
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.